Hello, my name is Beth Kerekes, and I'm the Director of Development here at the National Civil War Museum. And I'm so excited to tell you this captivating story because it combines two topics that I'm really excited about and intrigued by: American Civil War history and true crime. Our story starts in May of 1865 in Daviess County, North Carolina, on the Neely Plantation. Now, by all accounts, the Neely Plantation fared very well during the war. They were still producing crops and selling them, and the plantation was being run by the women of the family. Providence Neely was the matriarch of the family, and her two daughters, Temperance and Meek, were still on the property at the time of these events. In May, like many people and plantation owners, they had to make some hard decisions about what emancipated slaves would be allowed to stay on the property and which would be asked to leave. So Temperance and Providence got into a bit of an argument over one family of freed slaves. That was Galina and her 5 children. Providence wanted the woman and her family to leave by July of 1865. But Temperance intervened. She was very fond of Galina and her children, and she convinced her mother to allow them to stay. And so Providence relented. Fast forward to July 5th, 1865. It's a hot day, it's North Carolina, and the workers are coming in from the fields. They had been spending the day cutting and hauling wheat. Included in those workers were Galina and her older children, including her 11-year-old daughter, Ellen. When Ellen returned to the former slave cabins, she was met by Providence, and Providence informed her that she still had a list of chores for her to do back at the house. Well, it's hot, she's tired, and if she's like any other 11-year-old girl that I know, she probably had a few words to say about having to go back to work, and I think she said them out loud. This enraged Providence. Even though Ellen was starting to do the chores, she didn't care for her attitude. So she went out into the yard and cut a switch from the peach tree. And as the girl approached the house with water from the cookhouse, she grabbed her by the wrist and started to beat her with peach tree switch. This drew Galina's attention from the slave quarters. She put down her toddler and ran to her daughter's assistance. She got between Providence and Ellen and was trying to move her daughter away from the older woman. The woman continued to hold on to Ellen and beat her with a switch. Inside the house, Temperance takes action. She goes to the front room and removes from the mantelpiece the only firearm in the house. And it was a weapon like this, a Sharps 4-round pistol, much like Derringer, as I'm told by our curator. The men who saw this weapon in the house told the women that they didn't think it was worth much more than shooting houseflies, and it certainly would never inflict a fatal shot. Temperance retrieves the gun and heads out into the courtyard where the women are still fighting. And by all accounts, she fires a round over the heads of the women that are fighting and arguing with each other. She then fires a second shot. Now, there are eyewitnesses to this event. A former slave named Sally says that Temperance ran around to the front of the retreating Galina and her daughter Ellen and fired the second round directly into Galina's chest. Providence says that the gun went off accidentally. Temperance never intended to shoot her and inflicted the fatal wound that way. Everyone else agrees that Galina then retreated to the slave quarters, fell to the ground, and pronounced, "Temperance has shot me," and then died. Temperance called for a horse. She got on the horse and she rode to a neighboring plantation owned by another Neely family member. Upon dismounting the horse, she announced to all of the people present, "I have shot Galina." Temperance is arrested, and she's taken before a military commission for trial. Now, the family is very well off. She's considered an accomplished young woman, and so the family is able to hire a really great defense team for her, very prominent. They want the case tried in a civil court. And the reason they want the case tried in the civil court is because North Carolina law doesn't allow for people of color to testify against white citizens. The military commission wants it tried before them, because then they can call the only eyewitnesses to the events former slaves. And that's what they do. They call Sally, who witnessed the events, and her husband, who by all accounts heard the events but did not actually see what happened. With every person of color who's called to testify against the Neelys, the defense objects. And we believe that they're doing that in order to set up an appeal to the case, should it not go Temperance's way. Then the defense mounts their case. They talk about how Temperance and Galina had a special relationship. They call it a friendship. The disparity in power between the slave owner and the former slave doesn't permit me to use that word friend, but Galina and her family definitely got special privileges from Temperance. So in the defense, they claim that this was all jealousy. The witnesses who were called are all just jealous of the relationship that Temperance had with Galina and her children. The other thing that they do is they tear down Sally. They call white men primarily to testify against her and say she's untrustworthy and a liar. They provide no evidence to this. They just say it, and the judiciary accepts it as fact. As it stands, Temperance is found guilty of manslaughter by misadventure. To me, that sounds like she stayed out past the lights on in the street or something. To me, it doesn't sound like someone was fatally shot, but that's what she's found guilty of. She's fined $1,000 and no jail time. The military commission objects. They said that she needs to have time in jail. She needs to be punished for her crime. And so she's brought in, she's held in jail until the Neelys are able to pay her fine. The interesting thing about this case is that it sets a precedent in southern states as to how cases involving people of color and whites are tried. And these precedents and laws that are written post-Neely trial, some of them are carried over even into the 21st century. And northern newspapers at the time were appalled at the verdicts that were handed down in cases involving people of color and whites, and the disparity among those verdicts. Usually fines were handed out to whites who were convicted, while blacks were given ungodly punishments, most of the time including public shaming. Again, these types of verdicts were handed down through the centuries, and I think it only demonstrates how today's society is influenced by the results of the American Civil War. This Sharps pistol is in the museum's collection, and a similar one is on display in our First Shots gallery. And we welcome you to come and see this and to learn more about how the American Civil War influenced today's society. I would like to thank our sponsor, Steve Pahalik, and I welcome you to come and visit us at the museum soon. If you're not a subscriber to our YouTube channel, please do that now, and please follow us on social media. We hope we'll see you soon.